Hello, and a warm welcome from Washington, D.C. So, I've been asked to wrap up the day by giving a bit of good news. And I was thinking about it. Where is the good news for legal in the age of COVID-19? And what came to mind was a Chinese word for crisis, which they use only two characters to describe. Two characters are one, challenge, and two, opportunity. So I'd like to speak for the next 15, 20 minutes on where are the challenges and where are the opportunities, particularly during the time of COVID, for those of us in the legal industry. Well, the challenge part is really sort of the easy part, and I think we can get through that very, very quickly. The challenge is really about there are multiple layoffs, there are furloughs, there are pay cuts, pay reductions, and most of all, there's lots of uncertainty. We wonder, how is technology going to change our industry? Are we going to, or are many of us going to be replaced by robots? What about people from other industries who may actually come in? And unbeknownst to us now, what if Amazon or Google were to decide that they wanted to get into the trillion-dollar global legal industry? What impact would that have? Well, these are all legitimate concerns, to be sure. But I'm here really to focus not so much on the challenges, which are self-evident, but on the opportunity. And the opportunity, simply stated, is to build a better legal industry. After all, let's look at our track record. It's not very good. Let's start with the people, our workforce. We have, next to coal miners, we have the highest incidence of suicide, depression, mental health issues, divorce, drug dependency, alcoholism, you name it. And I'm sure that Jody Hill gave a very good explication of that issue, which is a pressing issue, and some possible solutions. But I think that in terms of opportunity, not only can we have a happier, healthier workforce, but we can do a much better job for our clients and our customers. Now, some of you lawyers in the audience may say, why is he using the word customers? And the answer is because not all relationships between legal service providers and customers have that unique client moniker. Clients are certainly an integral part of the attorney-client relationship, but today, law is much more than just lawyers or law firms. And it is equally about technology and process and business and other kinds of skills, whether it's data, whether it's marketing. We've heard from some of the marketing folks. It's a lot of different skill sets that are now being brought to bear in the legal industry. And so we really do have an opportunity if we use the tools that we have, we tap into different disciplines with different competencies, we create new models. The real opportunity here is to improve upon our record, to make law more accessible to more people, and frankly, to deliver legal services more effectively. There was a recent survey conducted in the UK by Cambridge Business School, a Judge Business School, that concluded that even among the top law firms and the number one law firm that a particular large client would use to give its most important legal matters and other matters, that the only 25% of that law firm's clients said that they would recommend their go-to law firm to other companies or those in the industry. That is not a very enviable track record. So there is a tremendous opportunity for us to improve upon the industry, both from the client-customer perspective as well as our own workforce. And by the way, we can do a much better job for society too. If we are more inclusive, if we speak in plain language, if we do not have these arcane customs that people do not understand, law, if it is to be done correctly, in my view, should be something that the larger society understands. It shouldn't be shrouded in dark robes and mystery. It's against that backdrop that I think we can really start to zero in on what is the impact of COVID on our industry, and how, for those skeptics in the audience, can you say, how can this guy actually be saying that COVID is going to do something positive? And I think there is already a sufficient amount of evidence, and mounting constantly, to suggest that COVID-19 can be thought of really as the great accelerator. And what do I mean by that? Well, for the years since the global financial crisis in 2007 and 2008, you started to see some steady incremental changes in the legal world. So, for example, you saw the rise of so-called alternative legal service providers. You saw the rise of the use of technology, and legal tech started to come into vogue. You started to see other industries, particularly investment capital, taking an interest in the legal field. And why? It was because they saw an opportunity for change. But so far, that change has been discrete, it has been gradual, it has been incremental. And I think that COVID is going to really is already beginning to change that. And how has it changed it specifically? Well, the first thing I think that COVID has done is that it has shown the industry, the legal industry, out of a sense of necessity, that in a matter of weeks, it could very quickly, relatively seamlessly, and relatively effectively go from a kind of an office-centric existence to a more remote workforce model. This is very significant. Likewise, it demonstrated to legal education that legal education didn't require attendance in a classroom, that it could be conducted remotely without a significant loss of effectiveness. And most importantly, perhaps, is the courts. Now, in different countries, there were different impacts. In the United States, sadly, the court system was brought to a virtual standstill. It is starting to respond, and now there are many, many more online hearings. There's even, I read recently, an online trial. But make no mistake about it, there's much room for improvement. But my good friend Richard Susskind from the UK is backing a remote courts global project that now has 56 countries actively participating, where the goal is to shift courts from being a physical place to more of a process, and to use technology and other means to allow the average citizen to begin to resolve some of the disputes that they have with other citizens without having to go to formal courts for intervention. That is, I think, emblematic of the potential and the kinds of accelerated changes that COVID-19 is bringing into the industry. And I think that all of this is very, very potentially encouraging, because COVID has cast a bright light on new ways that we have for delivering legal services, acquiring legal education and training, and engaging in a more effective, more accessible, more, frankly, much reduced cost of resolving disputes. But this is just really the start. As a GC friend of mine based in the UK, he leads a very, very large global telecommunications company, said to me recently, he said, "Mark, COVID is a death knell to legal industry incrementalism." The translation is, that there is going to be increasingly less change at the margins and much more fundamental change. So let's talk about what are some of these changes, and then I'll wrap up by saying how will these changes likely impact you and your careers and those of other lawyers and legal service providers. Well, in a nutshell, some of these changes are that law is not solely about lawyers anymore. Let me repeat that. Law is not solely about lawyers anymore. And I think coincident to that is the fact that legal services are no longer exclusively provided by law firms or increasingly by in-house legal counsel. So you have new entrants into legal services. And it's not just new types of law firms, but it is equally companies like United Lex or like the Big Four, who are not, by the way, just accounting firms. They are multidisciplinary professional service companies. And these companies are capitalized. These companies are very, very technologically sophisticated. These companies use data. These companies render their clients multidisciplinary responses and solutions for complex business challenges, not just legal solutions. And I think that's very important to note that lawyers think that legal risk is the most important risk. Well, surely in certain instances it is an important risk, but make no mistake about it. In today's business, legal risk is just one of a constellation of risks that business faces. And for lawyers to be effective in terms of assessing legal risk, they must, one more time with feeling, they must use data as never before. They have to cease thinking about, their opinion being driven by anatomical parts. For example, my gut tells me this or my nose tells me that. That is not the way that business engages in decision-making processes. So as part of the opportunity of our legal industry, we have to start using data much more in a much more widespread and thoughtful way, because that's what business is doing. We also have to understand the word digital transformation. We have to understand that it is much more than simply the latest, greatest tech gadget. That digital transformation is ultimately about the consumer, the customer, and it's about the way providers of services and or products look at what the consumer is experiencing and say, how can I reimagine the ways that I am delivering my services and products to my customers in such a way that it is going to make them more accessible, the experience is going to be more pleasing, and ultimately I am going to drive value and impact to them. And if this does not sound like most of the law firms and legal service providers that you are acquainted with, there's a reason for that. Because generally speaking, lawyers think they're doing quite a good job. But if you look at all the data, and there is a legion of data on this subject, they ask lawyers, how do you think you're doing? And lawyers will generally say, oh, we're doing really, really well. But then you ask the same question of their clients and customers, and they would say, not so good. These are both challenges and opportunities that are confronting our industry, and COVID is accelerating them because the pace of business is becoming so rapid. The changes are so profound that we as lawyers have both a challenge and an opportunity to keep pace with them. And the way we're going to do that is not by continuing to do the same old that we've been doing for a very long time. We really have to start taking our cues from our clients and our customers. We really have to start imagining what are some of the ways that I can improve upon, even if it's just small items. The small items are very important because it's part of a reimagination and a cultural shift that says, the way we've been doing things, we as lawyers have been so steeped in not making mistakes, and in being cautious and adhering to precedent. Now, I'm not in any way advocating for a moment that we should suddenly become reckless, that we should abandon our analytical training. But what I am saying is that in a rapidly changing world, we have to begin reappraising our legal mindsets, which tend to be, I think, very, very averse to any kind of calculated risk, which is how business functions. And how can you innovate if your primary driver is the avoidance of making a mistake? If Thomas Edison or any other innovators and inventors had had the legal mindset, we would probably still not have electricity. So we have to really start thinking about cultural issues. We have to start becoming familiar with the word upskilling. That is, we have to become learners for life. When I was a baby lawyer, back when electricity first was coming into popular use, you got your legal diploma, and from time to time, you would take a continuing legal education course, but most of your learning was on the job. Today, that's just simply not good enough. Lawyers today, legal knowledge has become table stakes. Legal knowledge is the start. And you have to start learning about augmented skills. So learn a little bit about business. Learn a little bit about how technology is being used. That doesn't mean that you have to be able to write code, but what it does mean is that you have to listen to folks here who are talking about technology and understand in a kind of an overview way how it can be used to make the client experience better and more impactful. I think that to end, I will tell you that this is an age where when I was a young lawyer, basically there was a very linear path to a legal career. And that was that most lawyers would go into law firms. They would spend their entire career at law firms. But today there are many, many different ways that you can take your legal training and apply it to other kinds of fields that are increasingly intersecting in law. And for those who are prepared, I think it is a fabulous, fabulous way of embarking on a new legal career, a constantly changing legal career, which will ultimately be rewarding both for you, for your customers, and for society. Thanks. I see that Jaroslav is in the background.
Hello, Mark.
And,
Hi.
hi there.
Thank you for amazing speech. Actually, amazing closing remarks regarding the situation here in Czech Republic and in Central Europe. I think we have a lot to think about. But I'd like to ask you, I believe that you are organizing your own online conference in a couple of days. So maybe let's introduce people and maybe tell us what will be discussed there.
Well, I think you're referring to the Financial Times,
Yes.
and they are doing a kickoff for a new program that they are starting. It's called Digital Lawyers. And I think it's very significant because it is a recognition by one of the leading business publications in the world that even the legal industry must go digital. And the challenge is, as I said in some of my comments, so it's a great question, Jaroslav, that most lawyers, as I say, have a very narrow and, dare I say, somewhat misguided view of what going digital means. We are all, to some extent, digital. I don't know many lawyers who haven't used or aren't familiar with Uber or Lyft or whatever the ride-sharing business is in your part of the world. I don't know many lawyers who don't have an iPhone or some other variation of it, or who haven't stayed at an Airbnb. These are all digital companies. These are all companies that have reimagined how people are buying and selling services. Law should not be and will not be immune from that process. So, Jaroslav, I am delighted to be asked to participate in that conference and in future conferences, because I think we are going to be hearing a lot more about law going digital.
Yes, yes. See you in Prague next year, hopefully. I know we've been in touch for a couple years now, so hopefully next year it will be the right time. Thank you very much. Mark Cohen.
My pleasure.